Hi, this is Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, welcoming you today. Business writing is our topic, and we are going to draw some advice from an expert on writing, Stephen King, one of the all-time best-selling authors. Business writing is not always either correct or clear or accepted for what the writer meant. Sometimes you've noticed supervisors give instructions that they think are so absolutely clear that nobody could possibly misunderstand those instructions. Yet the people who are receiving those messages wonder, what the heck is she driving at? What is it she wants me to do? When? How? With what results? And how am I to report on it? Likewise, business writing can be very, very dull, packed with technical terms, jargon, all sorts of things that distract you from the meaning that you're supposed to get. So let's pick up what Stephen King says in what I consider one of the best books of all time on writing, and that's the simple title, Stephen King's book on writing. There are many wonderful tips in here. I reviewed this book for Amazon years ago. I go back to it periodically, and I've underlined so many passages in the book that you almost wonder how I could read it. Okay, 4 tips from him. Number 1 tip from Stephen King, which we can apply to business writing, is there are not many people who are born writers, natural writers. It's a skill that we have to develop. Writing with his characteristic humor, he says this about himself. By the time I was 14 and shaving twice a week, whether I needed to or not, the nail in my wall would no longer support the rejection slips impaled upon it. In other words, by the time he was 14, he'd already been writing plenty. He'd written to magazines. He decided to put those rejection slips on a nail in his garage. And he says this, I replaced the nail with a spike and went on writing. So, take heart. If your writing is not where it's supposed to be now, recognize that Stephen King and many widely published writers like Stephen King didn't start out with wonderful, clear prose. I don't put myself in the category of Stephen King by any means, but I had a similar experience. I remember when I graduated from college, I thought certain that I could be published in newspapers and possibly some magazines because I'd been editor of the college yearbook. I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed my English courses. But for 10 long years, I submitted to publications, and I could have used a spike in the garage as well. I got so many rejections. Eventually, after 10 years, I submitted the same article to 2 magazines, which at that time wasn't exactly looked upon well, but I decided this sending sequentially took too long. So I submitted it to 2 magazines. 6 weeks later, I suppose, I got a letter from each one of them. And before I opened the letter, I thought, oh, well, I know what the rejection slips say. I could quote these even before I read them, but guess what? Each letter was an acceptance of that article, and each letter contained a check for $100. So it took me 10 years to become a published writer. And all that time, I'd taken non-credit writing courses. I'd read books on writing. I had tried to hone my skill, as we say. So if your writing is not where you want it, again, be encouraged. Even Stephen King had to have a spike for all his rejection slips. The second thing that Stephen King advocates, and I underscore this wholeheartedly, he advocates simplicity in writing. Again, in his colorful style, he says this: put your vocabulary on the top shelf of your toolbox and don't make any conscious effort to improve it. You'll be doing that as you read, of course, but that comes later. He goes on to comment, one of the really bad things you can do to your writing is to dress up the vocabulary, looking for long words because you're maybe a little bit ashamed of your short ones. His analogy here is wonderful. This is like dressing up a household pet in evening clothes. The pet is embarrassed, and the person who committed this act of premeditated cuteness should be even more embarrassed. He urges us, make yourself a solemn promise right now that you'll never use emolument when you mean tip. I gave an emolument to my server in the restaurant. No, I gave a tip to my server in the restaurant. Number 3, King says to become a clear, compelling writer, you must be an avid reader. He puts it this way: if you don't read, then you don't deserve to be a writer. And as a matter of fact, you don't have the tools to be a writer. Read books by great writers. Read books by good writers. Read books by interesting writers. And this will help you develop a writing style. And then number 4, he suggests, and again, I go along with this wholeheartedly. He says, be unconventional in your writing. Be unconventional. For example, is it okay, he asked, to use incomplete sentences? And he says, of course it is. He says, the grammar police will not come arrest you. I very much encourage you to get this book if you haven't read it, On Writing by Stephen King. Those are only 4 of the tips. There are many more in there. It's an enjoyable book. It's an autobiography, and I know that you will benefit from it. I see Thomas Bailey's on here, Jamie Hess, somebody named Sandra Lampton. Hope all of you are benefiting from these tips on writing. I love teaching writing so much. I have an all-day seminar, Business Writing That Works. I taught that a number of times for the Georgia Department of Labor. Again, an all-day course. And of course, it is an interactive program. You don't just come and listen how to write, but we write and we critique, and we even study basic grammar. If your company, your organization, your association wants to talk with me about this Business Writing That Works course, I'll be delighted to talk with you about scheduling this, which will help your employees and you with everything you do in the workplace writing: memos, texting, letters, annual reports, whatever you're doing in writing. This course can benefit you. Thanks very much for being with me today. I wish you happy writing. I invite you to visit my website, I'm Biz Communication Guy. So visit my website, bizcommunicationguy.com. Check on the services that I offer for corporations and leaders. Give me a phone call, 678-316-4300. Wishing you a good day. This is Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.